Hello, listeners, and welcome to the AfriWetu podcast, where we look to celebrate African history and culture by telling our story. As always, our hope is that it fills you with enough curiosity to go and do your own deeper research. I hope that you have enjoyed the show so far. There's a lot more to come. Links to all episodes can be found on this podcast platform. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. We're taking you to the west central coast of Africa. Today's civilization is the Kingdom of Kongo. This is the first in the trilogy of civilizations from west into Central Africa. For now, just sit back and enjoy the journey. So today, we shall start with the modern location of the Kongo Kingdom. Why? Because we're going to try something different, and I'm hoping that this will help you envision the actual region when we're talking about it. Also, quick note, despite the name Kongo, spelt with a K, if you didn't already know, it's not actually where you would think. The modern location of the kingdom stretches across a number of countries in the West Central African region. So from modern-day Angola to the current Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, in the east, as well as parts of Gabon in the north. The capital city that represented both the political and spiritual capital, Mbanza, Congo, can still be visited today and is found in what is modern-day Angola. So this kingdom was a heavy one in terms of content, and there are many interesting and significant things about it. For the purposes of this show, we shall go through what we felt struck out. So now, let's journey back to the southern western coast of Africa. It's the turn of the 14th century. And you can almost just feel the rush of the Congo River. This massive river that flows straight into the Atlantic Ocean. You can almost feel that water spraying on your face and hear the loud waves crashing on the shore. Well, now I want you to just lift yourself and imagine flying over the river and looking down. Now just take note that what you see below, from the Atlantic Ocean deep into the heart of the continent, all of this land stretching from the North River Congo down to the south, the River Kwanza, this was the majestic Kingdom of Kongo. So there's a myth surrounding the origins of this kingdom, that of Nimi Alukeni. It is said that Nimi went forth and crossed the border between what is earth and the underworld, the border being the Congo River, to fight those who lived in the Congo. And it is in this fight that his kingship was formed, through his possession of skills and other attributes that were becoming of a great ruler. Once this was proved, he was then blessed by the underground spiritual deity to then become the ruler of Congo. Now, outside of this myth, the other origin tales include the facts that this region was dominated by the Bantu-speaking Iron Age communities who are believed to have arrived in the region from further north and settled in the area from as far back as 1000 BC. And it is from these settlements and alliances that the kingdom formed in the late 14th century AD, where the ruler of Mpamba Kasi, whose son was Nimi Anzima, made an alliance with the ruler of the neighboring Mbata kingdom, whose daughter was Lukweni Luansanze, made a marriage alliance. And as a result of this marriage of the two families, they had a son called Nimi Alukweni, who was born to be the first ruler of the kingdom and the first Mani Kongo. There is a mix of fact and speculation as to whether he was the first king or if his contribution was in establishing the capital city as Mbaza Kongo, but nonetheless, Nimi Alukeni is seen as one of the founding fathers of this kingdom. So this kingdom was on very fertile ground, and it was sitting on a plateau in the western side of the Congo River, where there is a rich source of fish and a means of transport for thousands of miles. And in addition, the area was plentiful in iron and copper ore. So I want us to just imagine taking a walk around this very packed capital of Mbanza, Congo. There are tens of thousands of people. It is actually claimed there were about 50,000 people at its height. Ooh, listen, there's a shout from the gates. And it's the army that's coming back, and with a great cheer as they have conquered more peoples and the kingdom's territory has grown. So if we marvel as they march past us, causing a stir because they're quite a sight, there are 20,000 of them. This, the loyal army to the king. In addition to the use of the army in the quest for new lands, there were also expeditions led by the Mani Kongo's chosen chiefs, those who he could trust to set up outposts that would be loyal to the throne. And in this way, there was more than just reliance on the military, and the kingdom used its strength as a trading powerhouse, political alliances, and good old-fashioned marriages of convenience to grow. At its height, which is between the 15th and the 16th century, which was said to be the most prosperous period, with about 3 million people, the kingdom thus laid claim to being the largest kingdom in the West Central African region at that time. The Mani Kongo himself controlled about circa 240 kilometers of the central southern African coast lengthwise, and going inlands roughly about 400 kilometers along the Congo River into the interior. So to break it down and to make it easy to understand without looking at a map, but please be looking at one, basically from the Atlantic Ocean right across through to modern DRC. And to break it down to even further for those who know East Africa better, inwards, that roughly 400 kilometers. So to my Tanzanians, it's like from Dar es Salaam to Dodoma. For my Kenyans, it's like Nairobi to Mombasa. And for my Ugandans, it's like from Tororo to the Rwenzori Mountains. So quite a distance. So let's go back to Mbaza Kongo, home of the political and spiritual capital, the royal residence, the court, and the home of the sacred shrine. A little bit more on that later. We shall see the grand entourage of the Mani Kongo. He is an absolute and powerful monarch. Everyone bows as he makes his way around the court towards the Great Hall. So we can have a better understanding of his governance and how he actually came to be. So, in terms of the Mani Kongo becoming a ruler, it was quite frankly a little bit messy and was a result of much infighting amongst the nobility. Why? Well, let me just fill you in on some of the reasons. So, for one, the early Mani Kongos enforced their claim to the thrones through lineage to Nimi Alukeni, the House of Kikuleni. This particular line ended in AD 1557 with the death of the last in his line, who died in battle. He was then succeeded by Alvaro I of the Kwilu House. The second point is at the point of deciding the next king, all manner of political factions would arise. Basically, various relatives and coalitions created around their chosen one. These factions, this is the third point now, these factions would then lobby what we call the Council of Elders, I guess. And this council was the predetermined and designated powerful and influential members of the royal family. So these factions would then go and lobby these people. And you can only imagine the halls of power filled with whispering campaigns, blackmail, backbiting, PR. To be honest, not much has changed to date. But that was how we get to this Mani Congo. So after all of that happens, plus a few more added extras, then a new king is chosen. Then we have calm after this very fractious period of family feuds. Until the next time, then it starts all over again. So just as a quick side note, the dynasty of Mani Congos in itself is a whole subject and one that we will urge you to read up on and send in your thoughts. We shall revisit them in the future, but for now, we at AfriWetu encourage you to go and get the information. So going back to the kings. So on top of this claim, and on top of all this infighting, the kings were also then considered to have a direct spiritual link to the gods. They actually adopted the title of Nzami Mpungu, and I'll spell that for you. It's Nzambi Mpungu, Mpungu, which meant the superior spirit or supreme creator, and became the official guardians of the people from disease and famine, having taken on this title. Well, long before this kingdom came into existence, the capital was already home to a sacred shrine, the Mani Kabunga, which I spoke of earlier. This shrine had a powerful spiritual guardian also called the Mani Kabunga, a revered man both in life and in death. His power and influence was so well respected that the kings took up this guardianship, and to maintain this and reinforce their claim to their spiritual link to the gods, they would actually marry descendants of the Mani Kabunga. So there you have it. The Mani Congo is chosen. He has claimed his link to the spiritual gods. Now he can finally get to enjoy the perks of the job. So for one, the lavish lifestyle and gifts that they received, as well as an annual party. So I want you to picture the scene. It's that time of the year of the annual party. The city is filled with visitors from all around the kingdom. There are all manner of exotic foods and goods in the market. There are parties everywhere, but nothing like the huge party that's going to be held at the royal residence. The governors, Mwisi-Congo meaning rulers, local chiefs, all have their entourages and they're heading across to the main event in all their finery and colors. Because you know Africans don't play when it comes to dressing up for the occasion. And it's going to be one heck of a shindig. So inside the halls, there is singing, dancing, tables topped with delicacies from everywhere. These guys know how to throw it down. This lavish ceremony is topped off by the tributes of ivory, millet, palm wine, animal skins from the great cats, and so on, brought by guests for the king, as they bow and present themselves saying, Mani Congo, O great and powerful king, see what I have brought you from my lands to show you the loyalty and fealty of my people. And you can almost imagine the Mani Congo surrounded by the aristocracy, nodding with great pleasure at the treasures before him, responding to each tribute asking, what would you like from me for you and your people in that area? Is it military support? You got it. Is it food? Take some back. Is it the fine materials that were sewn in the capital? Here you go, reams of the best in the capital. It is my blessing. Well, that which the ancestors channeled through me as their representative on earth. Then go forth. It is yours. So for real, these guys enjoyed the life. So, where did all this wealth come from? How were they this powerful? Well, the Kingdom of Congo got a lot of its power and its wealth because it was a trading kingdom. So now let's just take a brief look at this commercial aspect, where the slave trade and other trade contributed to this wealth. So just very quickly, I just want us to look at the slave trade. And we'd like to say that it is impossible to go into the depth of this particular part of the history, given the format of this show. Nonetheless, it is an important and painful part of global history, especially to those of African descent. We encourage our listeners to dig deeper and find further information on the study and the impact today of the slave trade from the experts. The Kingdom of Congo had a booming slave trade, and this was furthered by the arrival of the Portuguese traders in the late 15th century, circa AD 1482. The slave trade then went transatlantic as a result of this, and the kingdom was one of the epicenters off the coast of the continent for this lucrative trade, playing one of the key roles as a trading route of those who were then said to be sold to the plantations in the Americas and the Caribbean. The slave trade continued to flourish, and by the end of the 16th century, there was an average of no less than 10,000 slaves per year leaving Luanda. Increasingly, this trade started to only benefit the Portuguese. In the examination of pre-colonial history of Africa, we shall see that many other civilizations practiced and supplied people to be traded as slaves. Sadly, we are aware of the following history and the turn of the slave trade into being one of racism and conquering the African people on the continent. The long-lasting effects of the slave trade are horrific, to say the least, in the way in which millions of Africans were subjugated to a life of hard labor and servitude away from their lands on the American continents. There have been many works written on the slave trade, and we encourage you, the listener, to read and educate others. Otherwise, we are doomed to allow such evil to repeat itself on such a large scale. So if we do look and move to the other strengths of the kingdom, we shall see that it prospered and was a trading powerhouse in ivory, copper, and salt. The people were known for their expertise in textiles, with specialized weavers who produced the famous raffia fabrics. These are distinctive hand-woven kuba cloth using strands from raffia palm leaves, which you can still buy today. The people were also master potters and metalworkers, creating beautiful pots, jewelry, and such like. The kingdom traded these goods and in exchange got cotton and silk cloth, glass mirrors and glass beads, and so on and so forth. These items and others were considered luxuries and were tightly controlled by the nobility. During this period, traders also used a form of currency called Nzimbu. I'll spell that for you. It's NZIMBU, which was spiral shells, thought to actually originate from Luanda. They were used as coins, as well as a standard measure of the value of goods, and also to pay for labor. There was ongoing commerce all along the southwestern coast of Africa. And in the 14th and 15th century, we find evidence of goods and products traded across great distances, from east to west across the continent, mostly through the use of many different traders. So think of it this way. It was like a chain. So I will give it to one of my friends, B, then B will send it to C, to send it to D, to send it to E. So we call this passing these goods from one to another in a sort of chain. And actually, it wasn't until the 18th century that there were what we call single caravan routes. So to go even further in terms of the trade and the extent of it and the reach of the Congo Kingdom, there was trade with another great kingdom, that of Zimbabwe, and in particular, the city of Great Zimbabwe. There is evidence of this through the discovery today found in the latter, in Great Zimbabwe, of 5 double-ironed gongs that were actually manufactured in Congo. So with all of this, trade, wealth, peoples, how did this kingdom fall? So the demise of this kingdom was a long and painful one, starting in the mid-16th century AD, and can be said that it was fully depleted and done by the early 18th century, to be honest. There are several factors that contributed to this. From the defeat at the hands of rival kingdoms such as the Ndongo, who had previously defeated them back in AD 1556. Then you had the Jaga warriors, who invaded the kingdom in AD 1568. Then in AD 1665, the famed Battle of Mbugua, which was the biggest blow from which the kingdom never fully recovered. In fact, following this battle, the Vili, who were north of the kingdom, became the more prominent trading post and grew its links to another new powerful broker state, the Kasanje, which is about 800 kilometers away and bordered the Lunda kingdom. So, the Lunda kingdom, look out for the civilization, which will be a topic in a future AfriWetu show. See how everything links together? Other factors were the civil wars and internal problems caused by the regional governors, who were getting more and more difficult to keep loyal. And the people were getting more and more annoyed by the ever-increasing taxes, which were used by the royals to maintain their very luxurious lifestyles, leading many of them to support the Jaga warriors' invasion, which I mentioned earlier, back in AD 1568. Then you had the constant infighting regarding claims to the throne, which, if you recall, was mentioned early in the show. This infighting just weakened the throne and its hold over its subjects. Finally, Mbaza Congo was sacked and abandoned in AD 1678, and by AD 1710, this kingdom was a shadow of itself and was easily conquered by the 18th and 20th century. Just before we go, to just give us some context as to what else was going on in the world, let me just mention a few. In the 14th century, when the kingdom was being founded, it was also the start of the Ottoman Empire, and the Great Plague in Europe killed a third of the population. In the 15th century, which was when it was at its peak, Christian Nubia falls to Islam, and the Mali Empire's beginning of the end, it was threatened by the Songhai Empire. In the 16th century, which is actually when one of the more well-known kings took to the throne, Alfonso I, who then became a Catholic, we then find that he actually managed to get a pope to appoint a Congo person as a bishop. We also find that the Malian Empire is now finally defeated at the Battle of Jean, marking its end. Just a quick note, all of these African civilizations I've spoken about will be part of AfriWetu future podcasts. So, this kingdom has had a lot of historical importance. In fact, I found a lot on it, so it was a challenge to pick out what to put on today's show because everything was just so fascinating. The region has in itself 700 years of recorded history, so you can imagine how much more there is out there. So on that note though, I do hope that this episode has gotten you, my listeners, hooked in to really do some serious digging and to find out more about this kingdom. And so here ends our journey to the Kingdom of Congo. I do hope that you enjoyed today's show. Thank you for listening, and until next time, Mubarikiwe. If you have any questions, comments, please do visit us on our social media platforms at AfriWetu on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also email us at afriwetu@gmail.com. And please feel free to also leave a message at anchor.fm/AfriWetu. So I'd like to give a shout out and a huge thank you to my dream team. For one, Mwendwa Mbugua for the direction and for all the support she's given me for AfriWetu. And then I'd also like to say a huge thank you to Big City Studios for editing, mixing, sourcing the music, the sound effects, basically all things production in relation to AfriWetu, because it really does make a difference and brings these stories to life. Thank you.